So what makes me cranky about Kong Skull Island? Tired military tropes. Hollywood seems to think that the only people who both join and stay in the military are either psychotic or too stupid to question an obviously psychotic person's orders. It's always the guy who wants out of the military or who's already left who has to be the voice of reason. And I get that this movie is set in the Vietnam era, so in some ways having your military commander go all Ahab is an homage to movies that came before, but can we just put this trope away for a while? It isn't even executed particularly well in this movie because everybody seems to understand that the military guy in charge is off his rocker. I mean, they got Samuel L. Jackson to play him, so it's not like they're even attempting to hide he's gonna go nuts. But the civilians hired Tom Hiddleston explicitly to be their guide to staying alive on the island, so you'd think they'd all just listen to him rather than just sort of shrugging and saying, well, okay, sure, let's continue this suicidal crusade through the jungle of giant horrors that have been effortlessly devouring us since we got here. There's even a moment I found super confusing where it seemed like everyone was going to let Jackson go his own way, and then they end up staying together anyway. As always, I try not to spoil these things for you in these reviews, so I can't really get more specific than that, but I swear I must have missed something in that sequence because I was like, wait, didn't you just say you were leaving? Fortunately, it doesn't really matter much because this movie is so fast-paced that none of these characters get enough screen time for you to care what happens to them. And so many of them die instantly and unceremoniously that it's often difficult to keep track of who's even still alive. Even towards the end, when they've been whittled down to a small enough group that you should be able to keep track of everyone, there were still times where somebody got eaten and I just didn't recognize them. I actually started to wonder if they were teleporting extras in just to be fodder for the monsters. But hey, I'll take that over the abysmal slog that was Peter Jackson's attempt to remake the original King Kong any day. Unlike that movie, you don't have to wait long at all for King Kong to show up and start wrecking these pitiful humans and some of the other crazy monsters on Skull Island. And CGI being what it is today, he looks good, and the fights are awesome, with some really interesting direction combined with a ton of slow motion, so you don't get too lost in it. There's a lot of really cool shots involving King Kong and fire and stuff, though many of them are pretty obvious metaphors for the whole Vietnam conflict and war being hell type stuff, so sometimes it feels a little on the nose, but it's still pretty cool cinematography. Another thing that helps this movie far outshine Jackson's attempt is that it has a cast of people with actual charisma and chemistry. Brie Larson gets to play a much more modern take on the beauty that captures Kong's attention, and Hiddleston of course has all his usual low-key charm, but the real standout is John C. Reilly, who's just really funny. He's the guy in the trailer laughing as he tells them they're all going to die, and that character adds so much fun to what otherwise might have been very tedious expositional stuff. I do kind of wish we could swap Samuel L. Jackson for Denzel Washington, though, if only for the meta Training Day reference. One other thing I thought worked really well was the music, which, hey, turns out to be another Henry Jackman score. He's done a few in the past several years that I really enjoyed, like Wreck-It Ralph, which coincidentally also starred John C. Reilly, and Captain America Winter Soldier. Like with those movies, it added a lot more weight to the film than I think it might have had otherwise. Now this is the second in Universal's giant monster cinematic universe after the Godzilla one they made a couple years back. That movie turned out to be pretty divisive since people like me loved the way it built suspense to reach a really exciting climax, whereas other people hated it for spending so little time with its titular kaiju. If you were in the latter group, I think you will really love Kong Skull Island because it has all the giant ape action you can imagine, so by all means go see this in the theater if you're one of those people. If you're one of the former, like me, then I call this a viewer's choice. I certainly had fun with it, and there's something to be said for seeing a giant monster on a big screen, but I don't think I would have felt like I missed out on anything if I had waited to see this later on down the road. In any case, it'll be interesting to see how The Rock's forthcoming Rampage movie stacks up, and this is off to a way better start than Universal's other monster movie universe, about, Dracula and Frankenstein and The Mummy. Oh, and speaking of movie universes, there is a post-credits stinger at the end, and it is worth hanging around through the credits for. So those are my thoughts on Kong Skull Island. Feel free to have your own kaiju-sized arguments in the comments below, and as a giant monster myself, I could really use the likes and subscribers to keep the government from hunting me down, so if you would be so kind as to hit those like and subscribe buttons, I won't have to destroy a city near you.